Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 is coming. In just under 2 months, both Phantom Liberty and the 1.7 update are dropping. I was able to play about an hour of these, and my god, it truly feels like we are getting an entirely new game here. But we still have a bit of time to wait, several weeks between us and Phantom Liberty. So in this video, I want to share with you my top 10 favorite mods to ever come to Cyberpunk 2077. These are the mods I use to craft my perfect version of the game, and the best mods to download for that one final playthrough before patch 1.7. And stick around because, trust me, I'm sure some of the mods in this list are going to surprise you. But it's summer, so you should probably spend at least a little time at sea, and now you can, even from the comfort of your own home. That thanks to today's video sponsor, World of Warships Legends. In World of Warships Legends, you'll command a huge array of ships in intense battles against the AI or even other players. And this game is on basically all of the consoles totally for free, including the PS4, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. But we're getting older. Our reflexes may no longer be the best, but thankfully this game is about strategy and planning. The game features over 400 ships from 11 nations to choose from, each having their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as being historically accurate if you're into that. Cruisers are generally well-rounded and kind of the noob mobile. Alternatively, you could try and sprint up and deal heavy damage with the destroyer, but be careful as you're always just a few shots from death. Or if you really want to lean into strategy, a well-placed aircraft carrier is vital for intel as well as the occasional bombing run, or just the all-powerful battleship as the cornerstone of battle. And new ships are even added regularly, but this battle will still get intense. There are 20 maps to choose from, and in 9v9 combat, things can get seriously hectic. Although my personal favorite mode is definitely the 3v3v3v3, where you really need to work together with your teammates to succeed. All this may sound overwhelming, but trust me, it's not. After just a few games, you're going to be a proficient commander, and over time, you can even upgrade your skills, commanders, and the fleet itself. And with over 8 million players, you're always going to have new fights and challenges in game. But right now is an incredible time to jump in, as the totally free treasure hunt web event is beginning. You'll navigate through a mysterious island with 3 fields that each have 16 cells full of hidden rewards. So stay active daily to unlock these chests and maybe even get an ultimate crate for yourself. By the way, that first key is yours right off the bat. So don't wait and command your own ship today. Use my link below to get World of Warships Legends totally for free right now. The first mod we have to talk about is E3 Visuals Remastered, one of those E3 stylized overhaul mods for Cyberpunk. But my god, I think this makes Cyberpunk 2077 look absolutely stunning. At its core, it's honestly a pretty simple mod. It'll tweak the lighting and roads in Night City. The lighting overhaul of this one's pretty interesting. Many of the other mods out there seek to recreate either the E3 2018, 2019, or the Night City Wire videos from 2020. But instead of just trying to recreate one of those visual approaches, this mod will take the best aspects of all of those and combine them into a comprehensive visual overhaul. The major thing you're going to notice is certain colors and lights just really pop with this one. Neon lights become deeper and richer, but not to an overpowering degree. I feel like most illuminated signs are even more legible with this mod compared to the almost washed out look they have in vanilla Cyberpunk. But it'll also make the game as a whole look slightly lighter, giving Night City a cooler visual as you explore throughout it. And a pretty interesting component about this mod that really sets it apart is the road overhaul. It's going to retexture most of the roads in Night City to be much lighter, similar to older builds of the game we saw in some past demos. The visuals of the roads are actually a much larger deal than you probably realize. You spend a ton of your time in Cyberpunk looking down at the road basically whenever you're driving. And overall for me, this creates a really nice visual both at daytime and nighttime in Night City. During the day, things feel a bit softer, but as a result, some of the lighting does really pop more and becomes more of a focal point overall. Conversely, at nighttime, the lighting will really come out, and some streets are completely defined by what lights are set up around them. Mods like these are of course going to be entirely preference, but for me, this is the best looking visual overhaul available right now for Cyberpunk, but I think it does a really good job at maintaining the game's original visual style while also being a big upgrade. But have you ever noticed that by mid-game in Cyberpunk 2077, you're just a god to most enemies? Do you like that? Well, I personally don't, and the mod level scaling and balance will fix that. The core of the issue here is by mid-game, many enemies in Night City just stop scaling to your level. This means you're going to deal an excessive amount of damage towards them. This mod is going to fix that by making it so enemies will continue to scale to your level throughout the entirety of the game. If you're level 30, other enemies will also be level 30, and in turn, that's going to feel like a much fairer fight across the game. But honestly, that's really only half this mod, and not even the major reason it's on this list, as this mod also features a damage multiplier option. So you're going to have full control over how much damage is dealt to you and how much damage you can deal to enemies. And just by even slightly tweaking these settings, you can dramatically overhaul combat encounters all across Cyberpunk. What I personally like to do is turn up damage dealt and received in game. So now enemies go down in just a couple of hits, but I also go down in just a couple of hits. This turns every single combat encounter into a true life or death situation, but at the same time it also makes basically every weapon in the game viable. All of a sudden LMGs are absolutely insane. With good positioning you can mow down entire groups of enemies with ease, but that positioning part is imperative, and tracking enemy locations in combat becomes one of the most important parts of the experience if you want to actually survive. Grenades are another huge one. Enemies are always going to be hiding behind cover, and that can be super deadly, but just one well-placed grenade and you can take out entire groups at a time. And for me, what makes using this mod, and specifically using this mod for this type of experience, so enjoyable to me is it doesn't necessarily make the game harder. Like yeah, enemies can take you down much more quickly, but you can also do the same to them. So it's not really like the difficulty curve is notably different. Instead, you just need to play a bit differently. You'll be falling back on some of your skills a bit more, you'll be planning more, and oftentimes just take some of these enemy encounters a bit slower until they actually begin, and then things will end very quickly, one way or another. The best part about this mod though is that it is fully configurable. If things ever get too hard or frustrating, you can tweak the settings in real time and just change your experience overall. And even if you don't want to rely on the damage scaling aspect of this mod, you can stick to some of the level scaling stuff just to make it so enemies continue to scale up to your level and give you a bit of a tougher challenge throughout the entirety of the game. But one mod that pairs incredibly well with that, but it's also just epic in its own right, is Enemies of Night City. This is truly one of the all-time great mods for Cyberpunk, and it only dropped a couple of months ago. On a high level, what this mod will do is give enemies in Night City a whole suite of new abilities that they're able to use. But also, in that different factions will be able to become a bit more defined based off of what abilities are available to that faction. And one of the aspects of this mod I really enjoy is it feels like a lot of these abilities are just leveling the playing field. Enemies can do what we could always do. Enemies will have access to a wider variety of chems that they can use. They'll be able to break our hold on them as you grab them far more often, but even beyond that, there are also just some more powerful abilities, in particular with some of the elite units. Like here, I come up against a group of enemies that are using toxic ammo against me, and yeah, different types of ammo with special effects are a pretty big part of this mod, but also one of the boss enemies in the group has access to Chameleon, so as they stand still, they are basically invisible, but as soon as they start moving, you can actually see the flickers of where they are. On a faction level, the Voodoo Boys are going to have greater resistances to shock, as well as the Thick Ice ability, so some quick hacks won't work at all against the faction, and most quick hacks will be more expensive to use against them, but Elite Voodoo Boys are even more specialized, now wielding shock weapons of their own, and having even wider quick hack immunity. 6th Street members will now properly be chipped, many members will have their own Sandevistan and be able to actually use it, so if you try and slow time against this faction, you might find that, oh wait, these guys can also slow time and move even faster than me. Militech become an absolute nightmare. They're going to have stagger resistance as well as burn resistance, so oftentimes even a point-blank shotgun blast won't knock them down, and you could basically never set them on fire. But they're also going to be able to hit hard against you, as they'll now have some incendiary ammo that will light you ablaze if it hits. These are just going to be a couple of the examples, but I think you can start to see how this mod will really change the meta and create a new style of combat with different factions. As although many of these enemies are now buffed up, many also do have their own added weaknesses that you could gradually learn and abuse over time. All of this neatly added in-game using the scanner, where you could get a brief rundown on what abilities different enemies do have. But this mod will also implement some tougher fights with some better rewards. Now, throughout Night City, there's going to be a variety of truly elite tier enemies, like this Militech Captain, who is naturally integrated into one of the existing gigs in Night City, but also has a wide array of unique and pretty epic abilities they can use against you. But if you manage to beat them, they'll have even better loot with a unique legendary you can get. And really, the fun of this mod for me is just how much more enemies can do. From snipers with thermal vision that can track you through walls, to the animals having leaps as well as berserk for themselves. It generally mixes up and makes some of the fights in Night City far more interesting across the entirety of your game. But maybe you're like, okay, that sounds great, but I just want to avoid enemies at all costs. I prefer a stealthy playthrough, not going head to head with them. But then the mod Stealthrunner is for you. This is one of the most polished and comprehensive gameplay overhauls for Cyberpunk right now, as this is basically a mod that's going to track your stealth actions throughout many of the various gigs and main quests in game and give you unique rewards for accomplishing things stealthily. A big aspect of this is now how you complete certain jobs will be tracked. But if you do things correctly, you will also get unique rewards over time to enhance your stealth abilities. So as you do a job, you'll notice a bunch of optional objectives that you can stick to. I'm not going to go through all of these, but a lot of it is just around being stealthy. Like for example, Ghost is pretty simple, just never get detected by enemies as you're doing a job. But some of the others are far more difficult, like never even attacking enemies, or even Hero, which is pretty unique, in that if there's a civilian involved in that job, you have to save them before the enemies take them out. But as you're progressing through gigs and you actually stick to some of the appropriate criteria, you'll notice that these objectives will remain on screen and still be valid. If you violate them, they'll immediately disappear, so you can see as you're doing a job what you're still in the running to finish for. And if you successfully complete a job without violating these, you'll get a nice HUD pop up at the end showing you what rewards you get. And that's where this mod really comes full circle, as if you complete enough jobs meeting some of these criteria, you get a ton of things like additional perk points, but also an entire perk tree tied to stealth gameplay, this being a completely new perk tree. And some of the things on this are really good, like pickpocketing being a proper feature of the game, new ways to turn off cameras around you, but also some very useful stealth ones like quiet footsteps or even immunity when exiting stealth. Overall, it's a really fun top to bottom mod. It not only gives you a genuine reason to pursue stealth gameplay over other playstyles with tangible rewards for that, but also just hooks in very naturally. In many ways, it feels like this could be a regular part of Cyberpunk 2077 that just rewards stealth gameplay, and it feels like one of those mods that may get you to change up your playstyle, but in a very organic way, which is always really fun. But then we have what I think is the single best romance overhaul for Night City with Phone Messages Overhaul. Phone Messages Overhaul will dramatically expand your text options with other characters in Night City. So on one hand, they're just going to be more texting each other. The way this is implemented with a lot of characters is pretty cool. You'll basically have that first romantic moment with Panam, but then after you might find yourself texting each other about what happened, and you'll have options to pursue the relationship further, or perhaps even cut things off, describing it as a mistake. It's actually pretty fun. You'll basically have an event in game, but then be able to talk about it after, which feels really real. Like that's actually how things occur in real life. Most of the expanded messages are going to be with your major romance options like Judy or Panam, but side characters get in this too, like Mitch texting you about some interaction you had with Panam previously. And some of these messages don't actually have much purpose beyond immersion. You'll get the occasional wrong text or even a heartfelt message that I just think really grounds things. Makes it feel like you're actually somebody living in Night City with other characters you genuinely have relationships with. And across the entire playthrough, this mod goes a really long way to enhance these relationships. It makes the relationships you have with other characters feel more meaningful and more real. But it also does add in a completely new romance option with Bugbear. You'll meet this NPC on one of the random gigs in Night City, but they now have a greatly expanded dialogue pool and a romance option tied to them. A lot of this, of course, being communicated via text. It's a super solid mod and I think a great download both for those who want more in-depth relationships and romance options, but also for those who just really want to feel more immersed in Night City. The car modification shop is just an all-time great mod for me. This will give you the ability to modify several aspects around the performance of the cars in your garage. There's going to be a new physical location in-game where you can drive your car into this and then apply all kinds of different mods for different tiers and different parts of your car. So you can do things like prioritize peak power and performance, or even just some better handling and tires. So on one hand, this is a great and fairly well balanced eddy sync for the mid to late game. It's a great way to clear out some of the excess eddies you almost always end up with in Cyberpunk, but the real reason I love this mod is due to how it makes almost any car in the game viable. In vanilla Cyberpunk 2077, there is a best car, and it's basically always going to be the Caliburn. But with the car modification shop, you can make almost any car in the game handle well and drive really fast. So it'll give you far more flexibility over what you want your main vehicle to be, and for me, that just makes the game a bit more fun. AI Netrunners Enhanced is a simple but essential mod for the game. By default in Cyberpunk 2077, other Netrunners are only able to use the overheat quick hack against you. Considering the depth of quick hacking and just how cool it is in the Cyberpunk universe, it really feels silly that that's all they have access to. Well, this mod will fix that, making it so enemy Netrunners will now have access to a wide variety of different quick hacks, some of which aren't even damage related, so they could use things like cripple movement or even reboot optics on you, but they also will have access to a much larger range of damaging quick hacks, and if you want to enable it, even some ultimate quick hacks like system reset, which will instantly finish you if you let that upload complete. It makes encountering an enemy Netrunner feel genuinely significant and more like a mini boss fight, which I think is a lot more fun. It makes a lot of those miscellaneous combat encounters a bit more notable, and when there's a Netrunner in play, you'll definitely notice it now. But another mod from the exact same mod author, we do have silent silencers and throwing knives. There's another simple but I think quintessential mod to properly experience Cyberpunk. By default in Cyberpunk 2077, using a silencer or a throwing knife doesn't actually keep you hidden. Enemies will very quickly be able to to locate you even if you're super far away firing at them. This mod changes that, makes attacks with these weapons function in a more familiar, stealthy way so enemies won't know exactly where you are, with one pretty big catch. This mod has an awesome settings menu where you can define how far away you need to be to remain stealthy when attacking an enemy. So for throwing knives, I typically turn this all the way down. I can be right next to enemies and throw a throwing knife at them and I'll be fine. I'll remain my stealth status. Because yeah, throwing knives is basically silent and a true tool for stealth. But when it comes to weapons with a silencer, I set a much larger and further out range. So I do have to be a decent distance away from enemies for my silencer to actually work. And overall, I feel like it's just a very natural change to the stealth mechanics in Cyberpunk. It brings it much closer to other games, but I also think it just makes the game a bit more fun. You still have to hit certain criteria to remain undetected, but now you can actually launch an offensive on entire outposts if you position yourself appropriately. But then the mod that'll probably be the least surprising entry on this list, we do have vehicle combat. This mod will do two major things. One, you can now shoot from vehicles. Drive-bys are a legit feature of Cyberpunk now, but far more importantly, this will also make it so enemies can call for backup, and that backup will arrive in their own vehicles that can shoot at you too. If you modded Cyberpunk at all, you've probably used or at least heard of this mod because it's simply amazing. Now when attacking enemy bases, they'll occasionally call for some extra help, and those units will come in all kinds of different vehicles to attack you, or even perhaps more fun, you can get in your own vehicle and run away from those reinforcements, leading to full-on car chases with other enemies firing at you from outside their windows. And this will also apply to the police. They can call for backup, but more importantly, if citizens see you doing illegal things, they can call the police, who will now show up in vehicles. On one hand, this is just a lot better than police randomly spawning on foot a few blocks away from you, but made far more fun by the fact that you can get into full-on police chases in Cyberpunk 2077 now. And for me, the big appeal of this mod is just how much more of a sandbox it makes Night City. Just messing about with enemy gangs or even the police can quickly turn into hours of fun, like trying to see how long you can get the police chases to last for, or even how many waves of incoming police you can actually survive. And it fits in super great, so much so that CDPR are literally implementing both of these features in patch 1.7. But if you don't want to wait until patch 1.7 eventually drops, you can use this mod in the interim. But then we do have what is my personal favorite mod for Cyberpunk 2077 available right now, and that is Time Dilation Overhaul. In Cyberpunk 2077, you technically have access to a variety of operating systems, but it really feels like 90% of players, if not more, just stick to the Cyberdeck, the operating system that gives you access to quick hacking. Well, if you download Time Dilation Overhaul, you'll probably be reevaluating that choice. This mod will completely overhaul how slowing down time works, but most importantly, it'll implement a ton of new Sandavist and Cyberdecks with a full suite of new mechanics and uses attached to them. Do you want to slow time to a near standstill to outmaneuver enemies or just have your own Quicksilver moment? Well, you can do that with this mod. Do you want to finally be able to reflect incoming projectiles with your katana and feel like a true movie character? You can do that too. Or maybe throwing knives are more your thing. You get some decks that will extend your time dilation for each knife hit you land. Or maybe you don't really want to slow time at all and instead you'd rather blink around to outmaneuver enemies or even just slow time for them and take advantage of that. And don't worry, that's not a comprehensive list of some of the Sandavistans available. With this, there are definitely far more options, including a variety that are attached to ranged weapons and ranged attacks. And what really elevates this mod to the next level is its implementation. All of these new operating systems will be naturally integrated throughout the world. They'll just be popping up at different Ripper docks, but there's also a ton of new mechanics around time dilation in general. Like you can use time dilation while driving now if you have the right equipment. Enemies can have their own Sandavistan equipped and be able to move even more quickly than you in time dilation for some truly epic battles. And for me, this is just one of those mods that really hits on all the correct fronts. It gives you a new and unique way to experience combat in Cyberpunk, a genuine way to change up gameplay on a subsequent playthrough, but most importantly, it's just really fun. With this mod installed, you're going to experiment with new builds, achieve things you have never done before in Night City, and probably laugh a ton along the way. Sometimes it'll be from achieving some truly epic combat moment, and other times because you tried something cool and it just failed miserably. Time Dilation Overhaul has genuinely created hours of additional fun in Night City for me, and if you haven't tried it for yourself, you definitely should. And funny enough, it's one of the few mods on this list that'll probably still be relevant even after patch 1.7 and Phantom Liberty. With that said, those are my personal top 10 mods for Cyberpunk 2077 right now. Let me know in the comments down below, what mods do you like? What mods did I not include in my top 10 that you think I should have? But if you do want to know a bit more about Phantom Liberty, you can check out this video where I outline all of the known features coming with Cyberpunk 2077 2.0.
What then? Got a plan?